7 лютого.
It's February 7, Ukrainian Media Center confirms starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheprenko, and now we're about to make a presentation of the book Ukrainian-Poland's Embrace, Realities and Prophecies. The author is the classic of Ukrainian modern literature, diplomat Yurii Shcherbak. And in this presentation will take part Hanna Krasnostup, the Director of Department of Information Policy and Information Security of the Ministry of Information Policy and Culture of Ukraine. Also joining us online will be Yurii Shcherbak, writer, diplomat, chairman of the board of the Ukrainian-Polish Information and Analytical Independent Media Forum. Also joining us is Tetiana Yaroshovets, PhD, editor-in-chief of the Independent Media Forum portal. Alla Maliyenko, merited culture worker of Ukraine, chairman of the Independent Media Forum Supervisory Board. Volodymyr Lipkan, president of the Global Organization of Allied Leadership, Doctor of Law Professor. And also joining us online is Anatolii, Serikov, honored journalist of Ukraine, editor-in-chief of the Monuments of Ukraine magazine publishing house. And also joining us in this studio is Dmytro Chekalkyn, former diplomat, TV and radio host. So, Ms. Hanna, let's start this conversation with you. This book is yet another documenting of war crimes and the circumstances Ukraine and Ukrainians ended up in, both in Ukraine and abroad. So, in your opinion, which place will it take among all those books describing the modern war? Good afternoon, dear friends. This book is not only the symbol of war, but the symbol of support of Ukraine by Poland, because it's called Ukraine in Poland's Embrace through the full-scale invasion. As a result of the full-scale invasion, the author had to leave for Poland, and the book illustrates the events starting back in 60s of the 20th century. It tells about the revolution of dignity and the way Poland keeps helping us. It's safe to say that today Poland is one of our partners who supports us the most intensely. It became a temporary refuge for a large number of Ukrainians who got houses, their new homes, humanitarian aid, new families there. The Polish organize a lot of events for Ukrainians now. And this book, Ukraine in Poland's Embrace, is one of the books that is made to implement the project, the Book of National Unity, which is implemented within the framework of the concept of national information security. And in the ministry, we think that such books, they call for our resilience. We have to be informed about what's going on. And I have a hope that this book will be also widely disseminated abroad. Our partners, our colleagues, they're supposed to know about what's going on in Ukraine in terms of the war going on here. And the beginning of the book illustrates the period way before the beginning of the war. It illustrates our relations with Poland, and I want to thank Mr. Shcherbak personally, the author of this book. Thank you very much, and let's proceed to the discussion of the book. Thank you very much, Ms. Hanna, and I would like to ask a technical team to get Mr. Yurii connected to us. Good afternoon, Mr. Yurii. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I would like to start with the fact that my soul is enraged talking about today's morning terroristic attack of Kiev and other cities of Ukraine. The Russian aggressor makes us remember about them all the time. We have to continue remembering about what's going on, but life is life. Life goes on, and obviously it's a pleasure for me to take part in this event today. You all understand that for an author, it's not like a regular event, just another book or something like that. I haven't written such a number of books in my life as I have in my background on that shelf, but it's my 30th book, and it's quite important for me because basically it became a document, a documentation of those difficult circumstances that our nation, our country ended up in after the terroristic invasion of Russian aggressors. And I was witnessing some incredible things in my life. It was like a biblical exodus of our people. I was witnessing the women with kids, millions of them leaving Ukraine, crossing the border to Poland, and Poland thus became a refuge for our people. And this is what this book is about. This is why we plan to issue it in Polish language as well, because the majority of the texts were printed in Polish press. In my articles, in my co-ed columns, all my impressions about what was going on, and of course I would like to wrap up my first part of speech here, and then I will express all my appreciation to everybody. I would like to hear your opinion as well. Again, it's a great honor to be here with you at Ukrinform and to be a part of this discussion of my book. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Yurii. It's our pleasure to have you join in our conversation, because your book is the reason we all gathered here in Media Center Ukrinform. So, Ms. Tetiana, a question to you. Why is this book worth reading? Who is the target audience of this book? Thank you very much, dear friends, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure for me to be a part of this, to be a part of this issue. Not only a part, but also I'm a witness of all those events described by Mr. Yurii. Well, I got familiar with his works way back ago. The first book was The Time of Christ Killers, and his, multilateral talent is something incredible. When I met him in the summer 2022 personally, it was an honor for me to see him with my own eyes, to talk to him. And why is it worth reading? Because as Mr. Yurii said, this is something that he was witnessing with his own eyes, something that he experienced himself. He knows Poland very well, very well. And all those materials gathered in this particular book, it's like, if he allows me, is something that he experienced with every single cell of his body, every single fiber of his soul, because he experiences the pain of Ukraine very profoundly. And if you've heard him today, it's like something that he starts with, like something that our day-to-day started with, something that we experience here, he experiences over there on a very profound level. So the meetings with the Ukrainian journalist Yurii Mykolaievich, when he headed our Ukrainian Journalist Forum, we met a lot in Poland. We were seeing each other. He was invited many times to Polish TV. We were meeting Polish journalists, and here in this book he describes all those things. And I can continue talking on and on about this, because, let me repeat it once again, I was witnessing what Mr. Yurii was writing about. This is why I do appreciate this work of his, and I think not only me, but also other people who experience this tragedy. This is why, dear friends, please join us, and I'm happy also to reiterate the words of Mr. Yurii that we are about to publish the book in Polish language. And we have a lot of friends, a lot of journalist friends in Poland, and our journalist forum is created in 3 languages: Ukrainian, Polish, and English language. And everything that Mr. Yurii was describing, in fact, is printed in Polish language in our website. So I can continue talking on and on, but unfortunately we have limited time. Thank you very much. Miss Alla, in your opinion, why is this book important for modern writer today, both in Ukraine and in Poland? Well, first of all, good afternoon, dear colleagues. Greetings and congratulations to Mr. Yurii for the new book. Well, I feel myself a little bit of a schoolgirl now. It's like I'm a part of this book, and it's such a great man, Mr. Yurii, who is writing about us, some small like mice. I apologize for the word. Well, I'm fond of Mr. Yurii. He's such an irregular person, so industrious. He's such a personality. He wrote a lot of things, and we're lucky to have met him. We were together in Poland, in Kazimierz Dolny. That's the place of recreation of Polish journalists who kindly extended their venue for us. And I can see Mr. Mykola in the first row here in the studio. He was a part of all that process as well. So we were trying to do something, not just sitting around for a month or so, as for example I was staying there. And when Mr. Yurii organized it all, it was, such an intense wave. He didn't leave anybody alone, and it was so cool. From that very moment, you cannot postpone something that you're supposed to do today. So, Mr. Yurii, we do appreciate your force, your energy that you charged us with, and all those meetings. They were organized to reach understanding between two of our nations, and really the Polish, they did a lot of us, all that kindness, all the way that both government officials and the common folks just were receiving us, the way that everybody was experiencing it all with us, feeling for us. And I remember, those trains with people, with dogs, like children, women, everybody were riding on the trains, all mixed together, and the door is opening and they give me that sandwich so carefully wrapped. And we were not used to it, and I was even ashamed to take it in my hand. And those things, they bring you to a different level, and you start thinking, well, probably us Ukrainians, we would do the same for our neighbors. But at the same time, my opinion is that the Polish, they do have understanding that if we don't stand united, they can be the next, because nothing can stop this aggressor other than the force. And Mr. Yurii, he is invited a lot of times to the new channel, and he keeps talking on and on about this. And I keep thinking, why us Ukrainians, why we were not able to hear Mr. Yurii before? He was warning about this in his books and his works, and we just cannot listen. We don't know how to listen, what should happen. So we start really listening, and everybody starts doing their own things, specifically in the information space. This is why, once again, I want to thank everybody, and I wish Mr. Yurii to never stop, because it mobilizes us as well for the further steps. Thank you very much, Mr. Volodymyr. We were mentioning it today a couple of times already, that Polish is one of our biggest allies, our partners, our friends. So how is this book going to make us better understand our relations and the Polish nation at all? Thank you very much for the invitation. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Mr. Yurii, and I would like, as a PhD, to draw attention to something not so emotional, but rather of a content. It was a prophetic way that the author described the relations between Ukraine and Poland, because everything changes, but not the universal friendship of the peoples. I have to say that there are different historic events and different approaches to interpreting them, but the history cannot be turned back, and we cannot be part of something that happened in the past, but we are creating the new history of Ukrainian and Polish relations, and we will be responsible for its comprehensive consequences before our descendants and generations to come. This is why Yurii Shcherbak very masterfully puts the politicians in their place who are trying to be populistic and prevent the unification of Polish and Ukrainian peoples into a strategic alliance. So now, for the first time, we entered into a bilateral agreement with Great Britain. We are walking towards NATO and EU for 25 years or more, and nobody knows how long will it take us to make our way there. But Yurii Shcherbak, like many other scientists, he shows the way of bilateral agreements, a different way. And I know that the next agreement, I'm convinced, will be a security agreement with Poland. And within the last period, among the intellectual of Polish community, there are ideas that Russia will not restrict its battle operations to the territory of Ukraine. I was studying this issue, and many people in Poland now discuss the failure, the defeat of Ukraine. We don't like to talk about it, but this idea is in the scientific circles. It's present there. But Mr. Shcherbak reveals the ideas that help Polish and Ukrainian people to win this war. For example, he talks about inefficiency of NATO. All the works of Mr. Shcherbak does not contain such things as we are deeply concerned and stuff like that. He's a very specific person who shows those who are worth it and those who are not worth it, those who help our sovereignty and those who destroy it. And this scientific precision is present in all of his book, where he demonstrates the inefficiency of NATO or OSCE. He says that the aggressive war of Russia against Ukraine substantially changes the course of the global history. We understand that we are a part of this biblical exodus. We are the concentration of good. And if it's not for the good to take over, the evil will be winning. Today is the 7th day, 7th February 2024. It started with bombardment of Kiev and death of people, but today it's a great day in the United States as well. Today they will be voting to extend support to our state in the Senate of the United States, and it will be indicator not only of support of Ukraine, but manifestation of victory of good over evil. Ukraine and Poland have a long history of relations. Let's recall Bogdan Gnatyuk. Whoever doesn't know him, he was born in 1915 in Ukraine, in Ternopil region, where he graduated from the school, and then he left for Gdansk. In Gdansk, he graduated from university, was a part of the community of Ukrainian engineers of America. He became a PhD, and he created that missile, which is now the best missile, Trident II. The best marine surface to air missile. We have the history of our state. We have to formulate the new Ukrainians. We have to stop waiting for the miracle and start creating the new Ukrainian identity. The ambassador, extraordinary and plenipotentiary, PhD, prosaic poet and dramaturgist Yurii Shcherbak is the image of the new Ukrainian intellectual, the defender of genetic code of Ukrainian national identity, a benchmark on the way to our sovereignty, the guide of Ukrainian language. And let me end with the words of Mr. Shcherbak himself. Ukraine is supposed to become Ukrainian. Thank you very much for such an emotional address, such an emotional feedback. Mr. Dmytro, a question to you as a former diplomat. How is this book intending to develop the Polish and Ukrainian relations? Mr. Dmytro, let me pass you the microphone, but before this. I want to thank you for the great job you're doing, because we keep listening to you and we keep rejoicing with you. Well, it's my pleasure to be here and to congratulate Mr. Yurii with his another contribution to cultural heritage of Ukraine. I keep reiterating this, that during the dark times, bright people are seen better, and we renew their contribution to the new Ukrainian history, Ukrainian diplomacy. I was lucky enough to work with Mr. Yurii for 2 years. He was the first ambassador, I was the first consul, and I always regretted that it was only 2 years. I would like this period to last longer. And back then I was lucky, to meet the wonderful family of Mr. Yurii, his elder brother, Maria, his wife, the children, and I was always remembering this family with warmth. And again, let me repeat it, what's worth in this life, what's worth keeping, is the bright and pleasurable thoughts. It's like a paradise that you cannot ever be ousted from. And I keep those pages in my memory, those memories of his nice family, and with my own eyes I was seeing what demographic tragedy was going on, because 3 of my younger kids, I brought them to the border. I helped my elder son, who was carrying his family to the board, and I was impressed by the hospitality of the Polish. My younger daughter was living with my wife with a Polish family. They had a large house, and they've taken a small room in the top floor, and there were 10 more Ukrainian families that they've put in their house, in their home. And even until now I cannot find enough words to express my appreciation of this help that the Polish friends provided to us. So we've created such a book club just this week. On Sunday at 5 o'clock in the evening, we will be presenting the books of our book club in the library named after Lesia Ukrainka in Velika Zhytomyrska 4th Street. And I will make my contribution to spread the works of Mr. Yurii, and I wish him once again to continue working for years and years, and to continue working on his books. So let's get back to Mr. Yurii. Mr. Yurii, can you please tell us more about what your book is about? What are the realities and prophecies that you're talking about? Whom you were inspired with? And what was the goal that you were pursuing? Well, this book, it emerged as a fruit, of a great national tragedy of Ukraine related to the invasion of Russian aggressors to our territory. And back then, as Mr. Dmytro Chekalkyn fairly noted, the demographic catastrophe happened because the people were leaving, women with kids. Our genetic treasure was leaving, our children were leaving, and not all of them will be coming back home, and they will enrich the genetic fund of those nations where they arrived at. That was incredible to see those unreal convoys and lines of trucks and buses in the Polish border, before the Polish border. It all requires more and more research, more books to be written about. I'm sure there will be documented research of that process, how many people who specifically left in which direction, but I just was not able to stay silent. I didn't want to live my days as an old man in solitude. Like, why did I go to Poland? Because I practically didn't stay in Kiev with my family. My daughter left, you know, I was feeling bad after COVID, and I left too. I left for Katowice, where the relatives of my wife were living. We lived with my wife for 62 years. She was from Poland. She came to Kiev as a young student, and we were staying in Kiev all the time. And of course, my knowledge of Poland is only thanks to her. Every day I remember her bright memory. I feel it really difficult without her, but I was accepted there as a family, you know, and I was seeing this process not only as a refugee, because I was not a refugee myself. I was feeling myself in Poland pretty good. I know Polish language, I know Polish history, but I could observe the process. And let me just give you a couple of figures. They don't really express a lot, but still we have to remember them. That according to the Polish statistics, 77% of Polish were helping Ukrainian refugees, and this is true. Of course, we know there are other examples. We know that there were people who were not meeting Ukrainians so dearly, and there were also enemies who came up with the program away with the banderization of Poland. They are the Moscow agents. That's the so-called marginal party that failed the elections to the Sejm, but we have to remember that they continue existing in Poland. But there is more statistics, incomplete but quite demonstrative of what was going on in Poland back then. 10 billion of zloty were raised by people, just regular people, and the government gave 16 billion, so the people raised 40% of that amount. But there is a statistic saying that people raised way more than the government extended to support Ukrainians, and this is what was impressing me from the very first day. As Ukrainians were crossing the border, they were seeing Ukrainian flags, they were seeing things written in Ukrainian, they were met by the people speaking Ukrainian to them. Unfortunately, not all the Ukrainians who were living were speaking Ukrainians. It's our personal pain that within the 30 years of existence of our country, we didn't teach them the Ukrainian language. But again, they were met by the stations deployed for refugees, where they were getting basic aid, they were getting basic necessities, hygienic products. Children could pick up toys there. There were piles of toys there. There were items of clothing, food, everything. You had to see it with your own eyes to understand that process. And you know, when unfortunately this honeymoon of Polish-Ukrainian love and support, unfortunately, it expired within a year. It changed to a more pragmatic approach. And the first tensions began in our relations. We understand that period. It was the expression of some profound feelings of the Polish people. And when one Polish politician from the new team of Tusk, he said that probably he's a historian, and he said that probably it's the historic events that are led as foundation to our today's relations. Maybe Polish feel themselves noble and Ukrainians feel themselves Cossacks. You know, he's tipping off to the times of Bogdan Khmelnytsky back then, when there was a struggle, when there were insurrections, the national insurrections of Ukrainian people. So I don't know to what extent those historic codes influence our relations, but I know for sure that the collisions of national interest is what influences our relations. There are national interests of Ukraine, we know about them for sure, but the Polish, they came up with their national interests. I'm not gonna dig deep into the details of those conflicts that were going on in the initial stage, but there were no clearly white and clearly black. It's not like we were furry and white and innocent and Polish were guilty of deterioration. No. The process was such that the both sides had to sit at the negotiations table and start some serious conversation, and not like blah blah and, as you know, some ceremonial hugs and kisses. We had to talk real things with them. Because our exports of grain was infringing the interests of Polish farmers, but there was some unfairness on Polish side too. But for the time being, now the borders started playing a role of an instrument of pressure over the Polish state, and now the blockade of the border is repeating itself without any relation to Ukrainian or some wrong actions of Ukrainians or mistakes of Ukrainians. So it has become an instrument of pressure on the Polish state, but unfortunately who suffers are Ukrainians. And Mr. Volodymyr Lipkan, I appreciate his visit and his brilliant address, and he said that we are supposed to approach pragmatically those national interests that exist in both Poland and Ukraine. I completely agree with him. And we have to develop the new line, so to say, of our relations with Poland. Professor Lipkan absolutely correctly noted it. I was surprised why the Polish are not among the signatories of those guarantees extended to us by Great Britain. And now, with the arrival of Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, to Kiev, he confirmed that they joined this process. And my idea is equal to the ideas of many Polish about the creation of strong strategic alliance between Ukraine and Poland. Before the creation, there were talks about creation of the joint state. I think it's a little bit premature. We have to move step by step to this goal, but why not eventually? There is an idea, a beautiful idea of 3 Cs that includes like 12 or 14 states. They include Ukraine, Poland, and we're dreaming about the strong alliance between Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltic states, the North European states, Great Britain, because only our alliance will be able to counter the terroristic totalitarian Russia with force. And this book, it was born based on those ideas that were supporting my aspirations to thank the Polish people for their beautiful attitude to Ukrainians. And obviously we have to understand that there are concerns today. Once again, I refer to Professor Lipkan, who properly noted that today, unfortunately, after this year, after honeymoon, after that beautiful nice atmosphere favorable for Ukrainians. Many articles popped up in Polish press where they forecast the failure of Ukraine. I'm really upset reading these articles. They are unfair because Ukraine proved its capability to fight and continue winning over the Russian aggressors, but nevertheless we have to understand that they continue existing. But on the other hand, what continues existing is the preparation on the Polish side to the war with Russia, because they clearly understand that, God forbid, Russia wins over Ukraine in any way possible. We don't know how it can happen, but we have to remember about that. The Polish are ready to enter the war, specifically in the area of Suwal corridor, so-called, the one that divides Belarus from Kaliningrad region. That's the dream of Russian aggressors, to capture that part of Polish border and thus to separate the Baltic countries and to conquer them, to have them conquered with Imperial Russia. What else I would like to say? I would like to express my heartwarming gratitude. I apologize for not coming to Kiev. I would like to be with you in that studio, but unfortunately my age and condition didn't allow me to do so, and I want to thank you for joining, for gathering there, for jointly presenting this book. I would like to thank Ukrinform for the platform that was provided for this presentation. I want to thank the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy for their input, for their participation in the contest to have my book issued. I want to thank the national community of journalists of Ukraine, represented by Ms. Alla Maliyenko, because she was taking the direct part in organization of our independent media forum. And also I would like to thank the publishing house Pamyatki Ukrainy, and first of all to its director and the key energizer and brain center of this whole thing, Mr. Anatolii Serikov, our director general of our product, Mr. Valentin Kondratyuk, who also did a great job in organizing the materials for our website and the issue of interesting books. I would like to thank Mr. Mykola Semenya, my great colleague whom I respect, and it's my pleasure to know that he is present in this studio today. To Ms. Tetiana Yaroshovets, to whom I want to thank for the warm words, who, while staying there in Poland with us, he was helping us a lot, being the editor-in-chief of our website. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Serhiy Kolyda, who is currently in Poland, the editor-in-chief of Literaturna Ukraina, one of the idea of resistance of the movement of Ukrainian writers. I want to thank him, and also I want to thank Vlad Dadin, a young colleague who was also taking part in creation of my book. And also I would like from the bottom of my heart to thank Mr. Dmytro Chekalkyn, whom I do respect and appreciate, who had made a great contribution to our embassy in Israel. We were the first people to arrive here. There was nothing over there, and so just I think our spectators, they know Mr. Dmytro as a representative of the comic media genre, but he is a brilliant scholar of Hebrew language, the Israelites were telling me that he speaks Hebrew language way better than half of the Knesset members, because Mr. Dmytro was basically teaching Hebrew language to those people who were living in the Soviet Union. And another detail that I would like to emphasize, not many people know it, me and Mr. Dmytro, we were visiting Yasser Arafat in Gaza Strip. We were seeing all of those things, and we understand what's going on there. So as we've come, Yasser Arafat, he loved Ukraine a lot. You know, his team, his guys, they were marrying our Ukrainian girls, and he was talking about Ukraine quite warmly. So as soon as Mr. Dmytro started talking Arabic, they got silenced. Their jaws dropped as soon as they've heard Mr. Dmytro speaking Arabic. He is a brilliant polyglot, and I want to greet him once again. And obviously it's a pleasure for me to have Mr. Volodymyr Lipkan, a prominent scientist, a very creative person who did a lot in the area of global security and so on. It's a pleasure for me to see him visiting us, Mr. Yurii. I apologize, but I would like to ask you to wrap up so we have a time for our journalists to ask their questions. Well, that's it. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on the floor? Good afternoon, Yulia Gadina, Ukrinform. So my question is to whoever can answer it. So can you please tell us where this book will be disseminated and at whose expense it was published? Well, I think I can answer this question as a representative of Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. The book was published at cost of the budget program 380810, the measures taken to protect the national information space. It's published for the free of charge dissemination. So to get a number of copies, you have to submit a written application to the ministry to identify the book, the number of copies, and we will provide it for you for free of charge dissemination among the population. Do we have any more questions on the floor? Well, now that we do not have any more questions, I would like to thank both author and the guests present here. Let me remind you, we were presenting the book Ukraine in Poland's Embrace, Realities and Prophecies, and Ukraine Media Center will continue its operation tomorrow. Thank you for staying tuned. See you tomorrow.